Good day everyone! I am Changin B. De Los Rico from BSED Filipino 3C and I am one of the reporters of Group 3. And for today's video, I will be discussing about the Module 13, the Bruner's Constructivist Theory. In this module, challenge yourself to attain the following learning outcomes. First, you will be able to describe the development of a child's ability to represent knowledge and explain how the spiral curriculum works. But before we proceed to our main discussion, let us first know who is Bruner. Jerome Seymour Bruner was an American psychologist who made significant contributions to human cognitive psychology and cognitive learning theory in educational psychology. Bruner was a senior research fellow at New York University School of Law. He received his BA in 1937 from Duke University and PhD from Harvard in 1941. Bruner is one of the first proponents of constructivism. When we say proponent, it is a person who advocates a theory or proposal. And when we say constructivism, means it is an epistemological belief about what knowing is and how one comes to know. Or in a simple words, constructivism means construction of knowledge. So, Bruner's proposed constructivist theory, and that will be our topic for today. As you can see, the organizer signifies the main concepts of the theory of Bruner, and we will be discussed about the representation of knowledge in active, iconic, and symbolic, the spiral curriculum, theory of instruction, categorization, and discovery of learning. Representation. Bruner suggested the ability to represent knowledge in three stages: the inactive, iconic, and symbolic representation. These three stages also become the three ways to represent knowledge. First, we will be tackled about the inactive representation. So, at the earliest ages, it happens from 0 to 1 year old. Children learn about the world through actions on physical objects and the outcomes of these actions. Children represent knowledge. Children represent the objects in terms of their immediate sensation of them. They are represented in the muscles and involve motor responses or ways to manipulate the environment. Example is that riding a bicycle and tying a knot, tasting the apple. Another example is that a baby shakes a rattle and hears a noise. The baby has directly manipulated the rattle and the outcome was a pleasurable sound. In the future, the baby will shake his hand even if there is no rattle, because the baby expecting that his hand should produce the rattling sound. The baby does not have an internal representation of the rattle and therefore does not understand that it beats the rattle in order to produce sounds. In short, inactive representation is based on action and the outcomes of these actions. So, the next is iconic representation. This second stage is when learning can be obtained through using models and pictures. Example is that look at pictures, wherein the learner can now also use mental images to stand for certain objects or events. For example is that a child drawing an image of a tree or thinking of an image of a tree. Iconic representation allows one to recognize objects when they are changed in minor ways. For example, mountains with and without snow at the top. Kasi dito na at the top, children will differentiate the differences of the two objects, or the two pictures are images. So this iconic representation is based on images or mental images. So next is the symbolic representation. In this third stage, the learner has developed the ability to think in abstract terms. So children can now understand through verbal instruction without images or movement, and it happens from 7 years old and above. This uses symbol system to encode knowledge. The most common symbol systems are language and mathematical notation. For example, for language is that read for research or making a research. And mathematical notation is that they already know the different formulas or mathematical numbers. So going back to the meaning of representation of knowledge, Bruner believed that all learning occurs through inactive, iconic, and symbolic modes of representation, and these modes remain available throughout life, even after mastery. Therefore, Bruner believed that curriculum should be designed in a way such that students get to directly manipulated objects. Then they should be encouraged to construct visual representation of objects, and then the students can use symbols and codes to represent these objects. So, learning should actually follow a sequence. The sequence should actually be the three representation of knowledge in the appropriate order, and because of learning is based of it, we come to a concept called spiral curriculum that is proposed by Bruner. So now, Bruner believed that any subject of any difficulty can be taught to a child at any stage of development, wherein the curriculum should be designed in accordance to the stage of the development of a child. The curriculum also should be in a gradual increase in difficulty, which means that students revisit the same topic at regular intervals with the complexity increasing each time. They revisit it and also ensuring that each learning step be linked to the previous stage and merely continues on. Therefore, in a spiral curriculum, teachers must revisit the curriculum by teaching the same content in different ways, depending on student developmental levels. In spiral curriculum, teachers must revisit the curriculum by teaching the same content in different ways depending on students' developmental levels. This is why certain topics are initially presented in grade school in a manner appropriate for grade schoolers, and then the same topic is tackled in high school but on a much deeper level. Sometimes a topic can be revisited within the same semester or school year. For example, in learning about Jose Rizal in elementary, we may have his picture in a postcard. Know that he is our national hero, born on June 19, 1861 in Calamba, Laguna, and maybe even have a field trip there. In high school, we may study his two novels in more detail, and then in college, we would go deeper into analyzing Rizal's works and may look into the personal and social factors that influence him in his life and work and write a term paper on it. This repeated topic on Rizal is a way of applying the principles in Bruner's theory, in which this part of spiral learning, that it helps you get a clearer understanding, thus more effective learning. Also, in the spiral progression approach, concepts are revisited again and again as you go up the grades. This supports mastery of concepts. So, there are three principles of instruction stated by Bruner. First is the readiness. It is that instruction must be concerned with the experiences and contexts that make the student willing and able to learn in order for them to be ready. And the second is the spiral organization. The instruction must be structured so that it can be easily grasped by the students. And in the K-12 curriculum, the spiral progression is a mandate. According to Section 5, Curriculum Development of RA 10533 states that the curriculum shall use the spiral progression approach to ensure mastery of knowledge and skills after each level. And then it will be going beyond the information given, wherein the instruction should be designed to facilitate extrapolation and or fill in the gaps. Discovery learning. Discovery learning refers to obtaining knowledge for oneself. The teacher plans and arranges activities in such a way that students search, manipulate, explore, and investigate. Students learn new knowledge relevant to the domain and such general problem-solving skills as formulating rules, testing, and gathering information. Learning becomes more meaningful when students explore their learning environment rather than listen passively to teachers. In elementary school, for example, teachers might use guided discovery to help children to learn animal groups such as mammals, birds, reptiles, rather than provide students with the basic animals groups and examples for each. The teacher could ask students to provide the names of types of animals. Then the students and teachers could classify the animals by examining their similarities and differences. Category levels can be classified when classifications are made. This approach is guided by the teacher to ensure that classifications are proper, but students are active contributors as they discover the similarities and differences among animals. In that connection, Bruner states that a theory of instruction should address four major aspects. The first aspect is the predisposition to learn. Bruner introduced that the ideas of readiness for learning. He believed that any subject could be taught at any stage of development in a way that fits the child's cognitive abilities. This feature specifically states that experiences which move the learner toward a love of learning in general or of learning something in particular. Mas malaking impact talaga kung mas na-experience ng mga mag-aaral yung mga activity o task dahil magkaka-interest sila na mas alamin pa ang leksyon. Bruner believed that learning and problem solving emerge out of exploration. Part of the task of a teacher is to maintain and direct a child's spontaneous exploration. Ibig sabihin, magkakaroon ng interes ang mga mag-aaral sa mga topic at pag-aaral kapag gumawa ang mga guro ng mga activity na mag-o-open ng mga isip ng mga bata sa ganoong topic. Kumbaga, malaki ang part ng mga guro para makuha ang atensyon ng mga mag-aaral. Next is structure of knowledge. This refers to the ways in which a body of knowledge can be structured so that it can be most readily grasped by the learner. Bruner emphasized the role of structure in learning and how it may be made central in teaching. So, kinakailangan sa pagtuturo ay nasa pinakasimpleng paraan lamang upang madaling maintindihan ng mga mag-aaral. Ayon nga kay Bruner, kinakailangan na ang ituturo ay simple muna bago sa mahirap. Dapat ang itinuturo ay angkop sa time frame ng mag-aaral. Ang mga example na ibibigay sa kanila ay yung kasalukuyang nakikita nila upang makarelate sila. The third one is effective sequencing. No one sequencing will fit every learner, but in general, the lesson can be presented in increasing difficulty. Sequencing or lack of it can make learning easier or more difficult. Spiral curriculum refers to the idea of revisiting basic ideas over and over, building upon them and elaborating to the level of full understanding and mastery. Sapagkat lahat ng mag-aaral ay magkaiba. According kay Bruner, walang insakto na mag-fit sa lahat ng learner. Dahil iba-iba ang mga estudyante. May mga topic na madali sa iba, ngunit mahirap naman para sa ilan. Kaya ayon niya, ang curriculum o leksyon ay dapat magsimula sa madali hanggang sa mahirap. And next is the reinforcement. Rewards and punishments should be selected and paced appropriately. He investigated motivation for learning. He felt that ideally interest in the subject matter is the best stimulus for learning. Bruner did not like external competitive goals such as grades or class ranking. Categorization. Bruner gave much attention to categorization of information in the construction of internal cognitive maps. He believed that perception, conceptualization, learning, decision-making, and making inferences all involved categorization. Categories are rules that specify four things about object. So, there are several kinds of categories. First is the identity categories. Categories that include objects based on their attributes or features. Second is equivalent categories that provide rules for combining categories. Equivalence can be determined by affective criteria, which render objects equivalent by emotional reactions. Functional criteria based on related functions. For example, car, truck, van could all be combined in an inclusive category called motor vehicle, or by formal criteria, for example, by science, law, or cultural agreement. For example, an apple is still an apple whether it is green, ripe, dried, etc. It is an identity, it is food, functional, and it is a member of a botanical classification group or format. The next is coding systems. These categories is served to recognize sensory input. They are major organizational variables in higher cognitive functioning. Going beyond immediate sensory data involves making inferences on the basis of related categories. Related categories form a coding system. These are hierarchical arrangements of related categories. The principles of Bruner launched the notion that people interpret the world mostly in terms of similarities and differences. This is a valuable contribution to how individuals construct their own models or view of the world. Therefore, we cannot judge or we cannot compare the students because every student is unique. And they are all different because students has a different level of learning. There are some students they can easily learn through images or movement, and some they like to learn or they easy to learn through reading information and abstract terms, mathematical expression. Therefore, it is very important that the curriculum must be in process. It should be basic to complex. A major theme in the theoretical framework of Bruner is that learning is an active process in which learners construct new ideas or concepts based upon their current or past knowledge. Therefore, the task of the instructor is to relate information to be learned into a format appropriate to the learner's current state of understanding. Curriculum should be organized in a spiral manner so that the student continually builds upon what they have already learned. And that would be all. I hope you've learned something. Thank you and bye-bye.